Yep, it's time to check into the old Bates Motel. How's it going? Sean here. For those of you wanting me to review the Robert Bloch Psycho 2 novel, you're in luck. No, actually, it's not as good as the masterpiece that, of course, is Psycho 2. Let's watch the trailer.
In 1960, Alfred Hitchcock created a masterpiece. Now, 26 years later, Norman Bates is coming home. They say he's sane.
It's my mother.
Psycho 2. Premieres 8:30 Sunday on Channel 10.
Yep, we'll be watching on Channel 10. Well, actually, I've already seen it many times. This is by far my favorite horror movie. It takes Hitchcock's original and amps it up to the next level. It starts off with the black and white Universal logo, and then crickets chirping and the neon buzz of the vacancy sign at the Bates Motel. Then we have the famous shower scene again for those who came in late. Of course, Hitchcock didn't like people who came in late. He would refuse entry to the first movie. But, in case you've been living underneath a rock, you see Marion Crane get murdered in the shower again. And still, it's chilling. She's in the shower, and then through the shower curtain, the door just swings open. That alone is terrifying. And then you see the dark silhouette come closer and closer. Now, Hitchcock was all about misdirection. Like you'd think something was going to happen and something else didn't happen. He'd always diffuse the situation. But this time, in his 1960 classic, there was no diffusing of the tension. There was no misdirection. You saw the curtains open and then the stabbing. Marion Crane dies, played by Janet Leigh, rest in peace. I'm sure the actress wasn't killed in a shower, but still, it's terrifying to watch. And then we pan away up to that familiar old house, which you can see in this book, ironically enough, called Ghost Stories. That's definitely the Psycho house, right? Yet you've got Frankenstein here and the Wicked Witch of the West hiding in the garden. Wonder if they could still sue. Anyway, we then hear Norman say, "Mother, mother, oh God, mother, blood, blood." And then Jerry Goldsmith's wonderful score kicks in. The soundtrack alone is worth the price of admission to Psycho 2. Jerry Goldsmith is by far one of my favorite composers. He's done everything. Planet of the Apes, The Burbs, Star Trek. But no, the music is sorrowful. And then the sunrise over the old Norman Bates house. It shows how ancient it has become, how far it has decayed, and where it's even older now. Then we go to the courthouse, and Norman Bates is being released from prison because he's no longer insane. They've cured him. Well, that's good. Lila Loomis is there. This was Marion Crane's sister in the first movie, played by Vera Miles. She's upset that Norman's getting out. She obviously married Sam, her sister's boyfriend in the first one, which is okay, I guess. They both needed someone. And then we're in the thick of it, straight into it. Dr. Raymond, played by Robert Loggia, drops Norman off at the old motel and house for a clean slate. He can start life again. But as he's walking up the stairs, he sees someone in the window. Is it his mother? We'll have to wait and see. When Norman goes inside the house, he looks underneath the telephone and there's a note from his mother saying she'll be home soon. Then he has a flashback to when he poisons her. The door handle turns, the door opens, and you see an old hand hit the ground. Very Hitchcockian. This whole movie was directed by Richard Franklin, a fellow Aussie, We talked about him last time when we talked about Road Games. A great film. But anyway, it strikes me as odd that his mother has an old wrinkly hand here, because in Psycho 4, one of the sequels, we see his mother is played by Olivia Hussey of Romeo and Juliet and Black Christmas. Oh, and you know who plays young Norman Bates in this? Henry Thomas from E.T. Elliot. So Henry Thomas plays a young Norman Bates, and then he also plays Jack Nicholson's character, Jack Torrance, in the Shining sequel, Dr. Sleep. So E.T. is connected to Psycho and The Shining via one great actor. Well, a lot of people don't like his performance, but here we are anyway. But back to Psycho 2. Oh, and Tom Holland was the writer, the future director of The Langoliers, one of my favorite films of all time. So we've got some heavy hitters involved in this. Norman now has a job at a diner. The exteriors here are amazing. They did a lot of matte paintings, as you can see here, with like the rolling hills in the background. And here at the diner, like they could put this on YouTube as like an ambient shot for like an hour. I'd watch it. Norman now has a job at a diner where he meets a few people, Miss Spool, a kind old lady, and Mary, a waitress. Mary, of course, is played by Meg Tilly, wonderful actress, and she's the star of the show. Her compassion, frightfulness is our gateway into this land. It's great to be back into this universe again of the small town of Fairville. She accidentally drops a plate, but then Norman takes responsibility to help her out, and a friendship is born. He then invites her to stay at the old house, well, the motel. But then when they get there, they find Dennis Franz of NYPD Blue fame running the motel, with drugs and partying going on. Norman fires him there on the spot. The state no longer has any ownership of himself or his property. And then this creates the first disgruntled, well, I guess Vera Miles is the first disgruntled character in this movie. But then now we have Dennis Franz, who also has a motive to upset Norman. So then Mary goes up to the house. When the first time they look into Mother's room, the lights are off, and then you see a little silhouette in the corner of Alfred Hitchcock, making his famous cameo, Even Beyond the Grave. Now, as a kid, I thought, oh my God, Alfred Hitchcock's ghost is in this movie. But obviously now they set it up with like a cardboard cutout, obviously, or something that looked like Hitchcock's famous profile. But still, a lovely touch. And it just shows that this is a love letter from Tom Holland and Richard Franklin to the old master of horror. I wish Hitchcock could have seen this movie. I think he would have liked it. Even though it's like Murder, She Wrote meets Jaws. Back to the diner now. And I've noticed that there's lots of Pepsis in this movie. I guess Pepsi was a sponsor. So, because I am a sheep and a consumer, cheers. See, the past isn't in the past. You can experience the same things our forefathers experienced. Enjoy a movie, watch a Pepsi. Watch a movie, enjoy a Pepsi. So back in the restaurant now, and there's this diner turnstile where they put the orders and then it spins around so they can read off the next order, or at least Norman can. But then we see the second note from Mother, and it says, "Don't let that little whore into the house again. Love, Mother." Amazing. And then Dennis Franz, well, Mr. Toomey shows up and he starts harassing waitress Mary, and then there's a ticking clock element because then the turnstile keeps getting closer and closer to the note from Mother and Norman's about to read it. He does, then flips out, confronts Mr. Toomey. He stops him from harassing Mary. Just wonderful. And then there's a knife, and he's like, "Go on, pick it up." Then Norman just backs away, back through the door. He thinks about it, but again, he's trying to be rehabilitated. He's a normal guy now. Anthony Perkins' performance is just amazing here. Then Norman explains to the diner owner that there was a note that he assumes Mr. Toomey wrote to upset him, but then when they go over to the turnstile, it's no longer there. And in great Hitchcockian fashion, overhead camera, when they're all judging him in this shot here, when he says, "There was a note from my dead mother." Chilling. Then he leaves. Like, it builds up tension and suspicion. This is a wonderful film. Mary is staying at the house. She's in the belly of the beast. That's why she's reading that book. Like, this is more tension and more potential horror than the first movie ever was. She's ingratiated herself with Norman Bates, and now that puts her at way more danger than anyone staying down at the little motel. Mary then has a shower in the house. Now she's just asking for trouble. Similar shots to the original Psycho. Again, misdirection. She doesn't get killed in the shower, but we're thinking she's going to at least get attacked. But there, the camera pans away from the shower, and there's a hole in the wall, and an eye is looking back. Who's looking? Who's responsible for the notes? And now the phone calls, claiming to be Mrs. Bates. Norman is more of a protagonist here. In the first movie, like, film skills go over in depth how we're on Norman's side when he's waiting for the car to sink in the swamp, hoping no one will come by. Like, as an audience member, he has our sensibilities. But here, even further, like, we want him to succeed. We want him to be better. And we think he is trying to be better because of his awkward performance. He's trying his best. So Mr. Toomey comes back to pick up his stuff from the motel downstairs. Norman gets another phone call from someone pretending to be his dead mother. And then, at the doorstep, we see a dress and shoes. And then Mr. Toomey is violently killed really quick, with hints of the old violin screeching soundtrack, but done in a cool Jerry Goldsmith updated 80s version. A little synthetic, but still as appealing, like his face. Dr. Raymond comes back, Robert Loggia, to check in on Norman. Norman is starting to question his sanity now that all these strange things keep happening around him. And then two teens sneak into the fruit cellar to make out and do drugs. But then they hear a noise. This may be one of the chillingest murders in this whole film. The boy is brutally murdered as the girlfriend slips through the window trying to escape. The dusty window is all we see of his fingerprints coming down it. And then she goes to the police. They come back down to the cellar. It's all been cleaned up. There's no sign of a dead body or anything. And then Mary claims that she cleaned up the cellar in order to protect Norman. Now we know she is on his side. But nevertheless, Norman keeps falling into turmoil. But Mary tries to console him. He brings up the toasted cheese sandwiches that his mother used to make him. It's the only thing he can remember, the smell of them, because the hospital and the doctors took all his memories away in order to cure him. But he still has that smell. And Mary has become like a mother figure to him here, I think. Nurturing, reassuring. And then he has the father figure in Dr. Raymond, trying a practical way of solving the problem, proving that his mother's dead by digging up the grave. Dr. Raymond has Mrs. Bates dug up to prove that she's still dead and in her coffin. A great scene. She's all decaying and skeletal. Amazing. So as the film progresses, we get under the skin of our characters. Their motives come to the surface, and then the end game rolls on, and we wonder what's going to happen next. Like, I defy anyone not to be on the edge of their seat at this moment now. This is a legitimate, suspenseful horror film, done with such class and intelligence and style. Anthony Perkins' acting here is wonderful. his descent into madness, questioning his sanity. Like in The Shining, Jack Torrance was nuts from the start. I mean, when he's driving up to the hotel with Wendy and Danny, like he's not a normal, like, everyday loving father. He's a little nuts to begin with. And then there's the story of how he broke Danny's hand. But Norman, he starts off normal. He's like, okay, I'm going to get back to society. I'm going to contribute. I'm going to get a job, then fix up the motel. But all these things around him are causing him to go crazy. And you can see it, like, chipping it away. Like any of us could go crazy with all this stimuli around us, especially when it comes to family and old haunts. So, great character arc. Wonderful. Because by the end, we're back to square one again. That's right. It's like the beginning of Psycho is just waiting to be reborn and re-emerge. Norman is back where he belongs. And a great last-second twist ending that changes everything. I won't spoil it here because I obviously want you to go watch it if you haven't already.
It's 8:30 Sunday on Channel 10.
So that's the masterpiece that is Psycho 2. Thanks for watching. Do you have a better horror film that has that same kind of suspenseful, edge of your seat terror? I'd like to hear about it if you have. If not, what do you think about Pepsi products? They're in the movies more than Coke. Does that make them better? Happy Halloween. Almost.